Hey there, powerful soul. How are you? It has been quite a while. I want to presence and acknowledge that it has been quite a while since I have been here to have a conversation with you on video form. And there is a reason for that. And we're going to have a conversation about the reason for that, but also something much bigger than that, in honoring the sacred seasons that God has us in as feminine women, lovers, and leaders. So there's a combination of what's brewing and stewing and steepening beneath the surface that I know will want to surface so that I can share it with you. And I have jotted down some things that I want to be intentional about mentioning and sharing with you that I believe is important. So without further ado, let's just drop in for a moment. It feels good for me to do it, and I don't know where you're at. If you're driving, please keep your eyes open and stay attuned and alert to the driving. But if you're not driving and you could just drop in for a moment with me, just connecting to your heart, dropping out of your mind, and dropping down into your body. Just a nice nourishing inhale and an exhale, dropping your shoulders and relaxing down and in. Presencing ourselves here and returning back to this digital virtual space that we are in here together. The topic of seasons and new beginnings and new chapters has been coming up a lot inside of my journey and inside of the work that I've been doing with others. And when I notice that there are themes or that there are patterns, I feel as a feminine leader, it is my responsibility to highlight them, to support those who are not behind the scenes doing this sacred work with me, so that you can be aware of any patterns that may be showing up in your own journey, but also be aware of ways that I can support you if you find that something I share with you resonates to the point that you want to go deeper in this work. So I'm going to share what has been coming through regarding seasons and new beginnings and new chapters. And I'm also going to present at the end ways that you can engage in this work with me if it feels aligned to do so. So I believe that we are to operate seasonally, because the way that the world has been created by Creator, we can look at nature, and by observing nature, we can see that God's nature is seasonal and cyclical in regards to how we are to operate as humans. And I want to presence and acknowledge those who are tuning in live. Thank you for your presence. So I believe that God operates in seasons in our lives. And when we are so plugged in to this modern, especially this Western world, sometimes you can find that you unplug and disconnect from that deep inner knowing that we are to live in seasons, that God has ordained seasons for us. That there's a season to be doing, there's a season to be being, there's a season to be harvesting, there's a season to be receiving. There are different seasons that we experience on our journey as women, lovers, and leaders. And when we observe the way that nature operates in seasons, we have the winter yin season, and through the physical eyes, it appears as if there is death depending upon where you live. I'm from the Midwest. I don't live there anymore. I live in Florida now. However, I'm from Illinois. And so I'm quite familiar with the winter yin season, where it literally reaches a point where it appears as if things are dying. But it's also an opportunity for rest and nourishment for nature. And so when we think about, well, what's dying in my life? What's dying inside of me? And using that as an opportunity for rest and nourishment. There's also the season of spring. The season of spring is where there's this refreshing and this renewal, and there's this blossoming that's occurring. And you feel that bubbling energy within yourself. When spring is approaching, you can feel it. You can smell it. You can sense it. You can taste it. You can see it. And then we have the summer season where it's that fiery season and it's hot. And there's that inner child joy that comes out and that playfulness that comes out. And then we have the fall season, the autumn season, where it's a season of letting go and releasing and surrendering. And so nature shows us through its seasons and the way in which nature transforms each season, how we get to operate inside of our own lives and relationships and leadership. However, inside of this modern world, sometimes we disconnect from that knowing and we operate on this 24/7, this Western calendar of we're supposed to operate like a factory, like a machine, like an engine that just doesn't turn off. And we're supposed to always be on, and our switch is never supposed to turn off. And we're supposed to always be going, doing. So we can have. And when we operate that way, there are consequences to that. And I'm going to talk more about that here in a little bit. But for now, what I want to, hello, Kelly Marie. But for now, I want to keep talking about the seasons and how as feminine beings, we are meant to operate seasonally. Now, we can look at our body and how our bodies are, that we have seasons within a month. We have 4 different seasons in a month as feminine beings. And so we are supposed to operate seasonally. We are not to be this, the analogy Energizer bunny that keeps going and going and going is coming to me. So I'm going to use that and go with it. But we're not supposed to operate that way. And I have found that when we disconnect from that way of being, the depletion that comes after that, the disconnection that comes after that, the dysregulation that comes after that, the dysfunction that comes after that is not worth it. However, because of God's grace, we don't have to stay there, and we get to recover from that and move past that and enter into these new chapters and these new beginnings that feel refreshing and restorative and renewed. So I like to draw from sacred texts and different wisdom traditions. And today I'm going to draw from scriptures from the Bible, and I'm going to give some context on Hebrew definitions of certain words. So for those of you who are new to me, if you are into legalism and the type of religiosity and toxic theology where you're not liberated and free from that, me drawing from different wisdom traditions and things like that may bother you. However, I know who I'm called to work with, and I know who I'm called to serve. And so if that's not your flavor, that's okay. But I want to at least acknowledge that may not be your flavor, and that's okay. I know who I'm here to serve. So with that being said, there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes that talks about to everything there is a season and a time, to every purpose under the heaven. And then it goes on to talk about all these different seasons, right? A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to be plucked up, that which is planted, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. And so we see through this scripture that the context is their seasons, in and out, ebb and flow. Now, I want to give some context on some definitions in the Hebrew language, because that particular scripture is in the Old Testament, which was written in Hebrew, translated from Hebrew to English. And I think that gives us better clarity on the understanding of what these words mean, so that we are thinking deeper, not just on a surface level, but we're going deeper with what is actually this text trying to explain to me and share with me and tell me, so that I can really sit with it and be with it and marinate on it and stew on it and allow it to become alive in my life. Okay. So seasons in Hebrew is zemon, zemon. And it means a set time, an appointed time, an appointed occasion, a season or a time. So I love that this word has multi-layer, multi-dimensional meanings, just like Creator, just like ourselves. We are multi-dimensional, multifaceted. And so we can't fit in a box. Appointed, the etymology of appointed, there's two different definitions here. Now there's the old French word, which is appointier. Appointier means to prepare, to arrange, to settle, or place. Okay? To prepare, to arrange, to settle, or to place. And the Latin word is appunedo, and that means to bring back to point, to restore, to fix the point in a controversy or the points in an agreement. And the Hebrew definition of time is eighth. It's a feminine noun, time. Seasons is a masculine noun in Hebrew language. However, time is a feminine noun in Hebrew language. I found that really interesting. And time in Hebrew means experiences, occurrences, occasions, seasons. And what I find interesting about time in Hebrew being in a feminine noun is the mystery of the feminine. The mystery of the feminine. And there is a mystery about seasons. There is a mystery about our experiences as women who are, I like to say, our firstborn daughters, who are daughters of God. There's a mystery about the way we're meant to live. It's not cookie cutter. It's not textbook. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's very nuanced. It's complex. It's multidimensional, multi-layered. And when we can tune into that mystery, there is a level of surrender and trust that has to happen with that. And I have found that modern day feminine leaders have a very difficult time with the trusting and the surrendering part, because you may have found a lot of safety in your doing and being in charge and controlling and doing things your way and doing it how you want to be done and forcing your way and forcing your timeline. We'll talk more about forcing timeline here in a bit. And when we operate in this way, there is something that happens inside of the destiny timeline that we're meant to be on. I believe that God has preordained for us to be, do, have, and experience certain things in our lifetime. And we could either align and co-create those experiences, or we can be stubborn and we can go try to figure it out through the school of hard knocks and either do what everybody else is doing or do what they say to do, or do it like this, do it like that, and find ourselves out of alignment. And I believe that right now we are on the cusp of a season of new beginnings inside of life, inside of relationship, inside of feminine leadership. But before that season of new beginnings starts, before this new chapter in your life, in your relationships, in your leadership begins, you must enter this season of surrender, this season of being fortified, of being refined, of being purified by God. You must enter a season that requires you to close the previous chapters that you're still attached to and holding on to, because you thought that was how your life was supposed to look. That was how your success was supposed to look. That was how your marriage or your relationship was supposed to look. And you're so attached to that that you can't complete the chapter and let it go and trust that there is a process you're being invited to enter into, a process of initiation, a process of the void, a process of, yeah, as Ilan Van Zet calls the meantime. The meantime is that period in the middle, that sacred middle where you're not where you once were, but you're not where you're going yet. This is where the work inside of yourself is supposed to take place. But it causes you to have to slow down and be still, be present. And when you're so used to being on the go and doing and being busy and rushing and disconnected from yourself, disconnected from your beloved, disconnected from the true calling God placed inside of you for the work that you do, you miss the moments where guidance comes in. God is always available to guide us. It's ourselves that gets blinded to it or gets deaf to it because we're trying to force our own way, force our own timeline, force things to happen the way we want to make happen. And when we are not honoring the seasons of the life that we're in right now, we miss the beautiful opportunity and the transformation that gets to happen within ourselves. There's a beautiful transformation that occurs in all of the seasons. Again, looking at nature as an example. Each season shows us a transformation is occurring. As feminine women, lovers, and leaders, each season is showing us a transformation that we get to be in a relationship with, that we get to be engaged with, involved with. And when we're in this modern world that has so much distraction, I mean, there's a reason that you haven't seen me for a while. That was intentional because I was honoring the season I was in. God told me, slow down, be still. This isn't going anywhere. And to trust in that. That's not popular to say in a time right now where, if for those who are in business, we're taught that all day, every day, you're supposed to be doing something towards your business. And as leaders, we're supposed to be marketing our message all day, every day. And those of us who have families, I'm a mother and a wife. So we hold all these roles and all these responsibilities. And giving ourselves permission to slow down can actually feel very scary to your system that has gotten quite accustomed to you going at a different pace for a race that may not even be yours to run in. And so we have to look at, where are we not honoring the season that God is calling us into? And where are you resisting it, or distracting yourself from it, or being in hurriedness, or rushing, or your egoic mechanisms, or all these different types of ways in which you can put on the filters to not hear, not see all the signs that God is saying, this is a new season. Now, before we enter a new chapter and new beginnings where everything feels amazing and our relationship is better than ever, and we're feeling inspired and on fire inside of our work, and creativity is popping, and we have opportunities coming in and clients for whatever work that you do, and we're feeling radiant and vibrant and full of vitality in our womanhood, there is a season that gets us there. It's not close this chapter, enter new chapter, which is what many are wanting to do. Close this chapter, complete this chapter, enter this new chapter. There is a void. There is a middle. There is a meantime. There is a period between chapters. That is the season that you must honor, where you are entering God's transformational cocoon for your soul's evolution. And I believe our evolution is a mandate by our Maker. We were not placed on this planet to not evolve. We must evolve inside of every area of our lives. Every area. And I find many high achieving feminine leaders focus heavily on their leadership, heavily on their business, which is fantastic because we're moving the world forward. But you can't neglect the other areas of your womanhood, of who you are inside of your relationships as well. And so, yes, we want to evolve in our leadership, and we want to evolve and be more savvy as businesswomen. And we also want to look at who are we being within our womanhood? Who are we being within our relationships with our beloveds? Because all of that is interconnected. And most importantly, who are we being with our first beloved, God? Now, I'm going to share a little bit about the consequences of forcing our own timeline, and then go into sharing a little bit more about my experience of honoring the season that I was in. And we'll go from there. We'll flow from there. So when we are forcing our own timeline, meaning we're forcing our own will in our own way, and we want things to happen in the way that we want them to, in the timing that we want them to, and it to look exactly how we were trying to will it in. However, God has other plans, because that's just how God tends to work sometimes. There's only so long that I believe God will allow us to operate in that way before these sacred disruptions show up in our life and wake us up, jolt us, or subtle nudges that are reminding us that we're drifting a little bit too far over here. We need to come back. Come back. And when we are drifting or forcing our own timeline, I believe that there are some consequences that we experience. And the first one, which I believe is the absolute most important, is feeling disconnected from God. One of the reasons feminine, high-achieving leaders come to me is to first feel closer to God. And it is a deep, deep yearning in your heart and soul when you don't feel that closeness and that connection at the depth that you know is available. There's a depth of closeness and connection with God that you know deep down is available. And you know when you're writing it on the surface. You know when you're just doing things to check it off the to-do list. Did I do my prayers? Did I do my sacred work? Did I do my sacred practices? Just checking it off. But there's no devotion. There's no real true devotion. And devotion is the difference between checking things off on a to-do list so that you feel like a good girl and you did the thing you said you needed to do to be a woman that's connected to God and in your spiritual faith and all these things, but it lacks depth. It lacks devotion. And deep down in your soul, in your belly, you know it and you can feel it. Another thing is when you start to notice that there's a decrease in your radiance and your vitality as a feminine being woman. And it doesn't always show up as immediate depletion or immediate stress or immediate burnout or immediate fatigue. Sometimes it's just subtle of like, you know what I mean? Like I know what it feels like to feel radiant and full of aliveness and full of vitality. I know what that feels like. And you know when you don't feel that. Another way that this shows up is when there is a disconnect with your beloved and the connection between you and your beloved is not the same. And this could look in a multitude of ways. I've worked with women who are on the cusp of divorce because the disconnection had reached that point. And I've worked with women who realized that it wasn't on the cusp of divorce, but it wasn't quite where they wanted it to be. And they wanted to transform their relationship with their beloved, because it was leaking into their business. It was leaking into their leadership. Everything is interconnected. When your heart is aching, it shows up in your business. When your heart is aching, it shows up in your leadership. When your heart is aching, it shows up in the work that you do. No matter how much you try to pretend and perform and hide it or mask it, it leaks through. We're not just physical beings. We're also spiritual and energetic beings. We can feel when something is off. We can feel when something is not correct. We feel it. And another one is when you notice that you don't feel as inspired and on fire inside of your leadership, inside of your work. Maybe you even feel disconnected from your creativity. Maybe you feel that you have capped your potential and that the potentiality that you know is possible and available for you feels like you're not reaching it. And a final way that it shows up is that you are feeling disconnected from the abundance that you already have here and now. That no matter how much money that you've earned, no matter how much prosperity that you have in your life, you can't even feel the abundance. And so those are a few examples of ways that not honoring the season can start to show up inside of your life, your love, or your leadership. And what you have to understand is that before you enter this new chapter, after this new chapter is ended, this season here is to reset you, restore you, transform you into the version of yourself who is going to be able to experience the vitality and the radiance and the deep intimacy, pleasure, and connection, and the impact and the fire and inspiration and feeling abundant in your life and your love and your leadership. You are becoming the person who God can trust with that in the season of processing, the season of purification and refinement, where you become refined like pure gold. Just taking that in for a moment. Because I realize and I'm acknowledging that sometimes we don't want to hear this stuff. And that's something I've grappled with in my own leadership. As a truth teller and a truth speaker, God calls me to speak what I see and speak truth. And what I find difficult at times, being in the online space and doing messaging and doing this work, is finding ways to speak what I see when the scripture says that people have itching ears and there will come a time where they only want to hear what they want to hear. And I see that right now. I see that right now. People only want to hear what they want to hear. And the things that I have to share and the work that I bring forward is not always what people want to hear. But it's what's going to evolve you on a soul level, on a cellular level, on a somatic level, on an unconscious level, on an identity level. And so it's radically transformative for the ones who can receive it. Like one of my clients that I'm working with right now. And everything is transforming in her life supernaturally, radically. Because she can drink the truth serum, as I often say, and hear it and listen and go do what she needs to do in this season that she's in. She's honoring the season that she's in. And God's blessing her for that and honoring her for that. Now, when God told me to come off of here and no videos, and so it's been probably 5 months or so, 5 or 6 months since I've done a video, and to go even deeper in my devotion. And I would say I'm a pretty devoted woman, more devoted than most people that I know. But God said deeper. Because before God takes us higher, there's a level of depth we have to descend to. Everybody is talking about ascending, ascension, going higher. They want to go into the ethers, into the heavenly realms, and they want to bring heaven on earth here and now. They want to make all these things happen, but nobody wants to go into the descent, into the depths. That's where the magic happens. The ascension, the ascending, all the things that happen at the higher realms and levels is a byproduct of who you become in the depths. In the depths of your being, in the depths of your soul, in the depths of you and God and whomever you're doing this sacred work with. Shedding, letting go, and releasing the layers that are not true to your original nature. And so I was navigating my own season of slowness, of stillness, of soaking in God's presence. Being refined, being reshaped, being remolded by Creator. Tending to the things that were still in my heart. And allowing God to nourish me on a soul level. And re-emerging now with more refinement, with a depth of embodiment that I could not have even imagined, with a level of clarity in my work that brings me to tears at times. And I could keep going on and on and on. There will be more details to come, because there's been much that has been brewing beneath the surface in the depths of this sacred season I was in. And I believe that when we honor the sacred seasons that God puts us in, God honors us with new beginnings and a new chapter where things in our life, love, and leadership are more than we could have ever imagined or dreamt up or scripted out. And so I believe that right now, God is calling his daughters back home to their first beloved in a deeper way. So that you are experiencing supernatural successes in your life, in your love, and in your leadership. And those experiences, they're so miraculous. They are beyond New Age manifestation. We're talking about the heavenly realms here, beyond the physical realms, beyond energetics. I also work with energetics in my work, but my deepest coding is in the spiritual realm. And that's why modern day high achieving feminine leaders come to me. Because my role in this sacred work as a transformational artist and mentor and prophetess is to first bring you closer to God, the Creator. Another role that I hold is to speak what I see in the unseen realms and what God reveals to me. What does this look like? This looks like what I see your potential, what I see as patterns that could be sabotaging that potential, that are also your blind spots, but also prophetically seeing what's preordained and destined for you by God. Another one of my roles is to course correct the timeline that you're on inside of your life, inside of your love, inside of your leadership, so that you are in alignment with that which God has already preordained for you. You step out of forcing your own timeline. You step out of forcing and trying to make things happen. You step out of doing manipulative things. And you allow yourself to be recalibrated in that sacred season, so that when this season of new beginnings and this new chapter approaches, you're actually ready to receive it. You're ready to receive the blessings. You're ready to receive the miracles. You're ready to experience the expansion of your evolution. Another role that I have is to restore you back to your original nature as an authentic, non-performative, embodied feminine leader. I actually was just interviewed today for the first time in a very long time on a podcast, and I shared some details inside of my story, so you may want to go and check out my story, some little cliff notes that I shared, and I'll let you know when the recording comes out of the podcast episode. But I shared with the podcast interviewer that this was the first podcast interview that I have accepted in nearly a year. I have been asked to be featured inside of a magazine. I have been asked to be featured on several podcasts. I have turned them all down because I was honoring the season God had me, and God told me to be still. And I honored that with my obedience and my devotion to God first. And so while it appeared to many that I was gone, or maybe I fell off, or I wasn't on anymore, I was behind the scenes being recoded, reshaped, restored, remolded by the Almighty I am that I am for such a time as this. And when one of my colleagues reached out to me to be featured on her podcast, I felt the yes in my spirit, and I went ahead and accepted the invitation, and we recorded the podcast interview today. And I told her I prefer to flow and allow whatever is meant to come out of this conversation to arise. I don't do forcing. I don't do all this, let's, make things happen. And we had a very beautiful conversation. And a topic that came up was visibility for feminine leaders. And I was sharing with her all of the different experiences I've had with high-level visibility. And when I say high-level visibility, I'm talking about media, I'm talking about a commercial, I'm talking about stages, front cover of a magazine, all sorts of high-level visibility opportunities. And the attacks that came with that. I've experienced those attacks since I was a teen. Because for some reason, God called me to be highly visible when I didn't want to. And that's part of the role when we are feminine leaders. And even those of us who are prophetess, we actually didn't ask for this. We could do without, And I was sharing that I had seasons that I had to enter where God and I went deep within. And as a result, I am still here, still showing up despite those experiences. Because by honoring that season, I can be recoded. I can be with whatever experiences caused me to not feel safe in my visibility. There are many other topics we talked about on the podcast, but that's one I just felt led to bring forward and I wanted to share with you. And the embodiment piece was what we talked about, how right now, and I'm seeing this right now a lot, where there's a lot of performative leadership, there's a lot of performative allyship, there's a lot of performative spirituality going on, especially in the online space. And God is a God of order. And I believe that if people do not heed to completing that chapter and honoring this season that I've been referencing before the new beginnings, before the new chapter emerges, that they're going to experience those consequences that I described. So what I want to share with you now is a few ways that you can go deeper with me if you feel led to. So the first one is Supernatural Woman, She Who Has It All. It is a private, exclusive mentorship container with me as your guide, as your mentor, as your facilitator. And I only have 2 spots available for 4 months of private work together. You can reach out to me to inquire further. The second one is I'm going to be doing a no cost chat about redefining having it all. If that's something you're interested in, you can reach out to me and I will share with you when that will be held so that you can access it. And finally, I'm doing a collaboration with a colleague, Julia Myers. We've done this collaboration many times over the last couple of years, and we're doing this collaboration again for a challenge on mastering your vision. And it is a challenge being held, I believe, at the end of the month. And so if that's something you're interested in, reach out and I will share those details with you. Thank you so much for welcoming me back. My frequency of consistency will be nuanced. I'm going to honor the flow in which I am meant to operate in. I'm going to honor the rhythm in which I am meant to operate in. And so we will see how we flow and grow from there. I hope you have a beautiful, blessed day, and I'll chat with you very soon. Take care now.